What's happening, guys? So I'm about halfway through the assembly and installation of this AFE powered GT Momentum cold air intake for a 21 and up Ford F-150 with the Coyote V8. What makes it specific to the 21 and up? Well, this large coupler might give that away a little bit. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. That's this guy right here. So for the Gen 4 Coyotes, that throttle body now measures 87 millimeters, and that's 87 millimeters at the butterfly valve, not at the lip. That's more like 90 millimeters. So if you've got your eye on another cold air kit, make sure it's got provisions for one of these larger throttle bodies, because if it does not, it will not work with this truck. Okay, so with the kit, you get the bigger coupler, this monster intake tube, this air box. Quality on this thing is great. And I love that you get a straight shot into the air box from the snorkel. That thing is huge, and it's going to need to be able to handle this monster air filter. This thing's about the size of my head. But definitely a good looking kit, super easy to install. Let me kind of give you a bit of a walkthrough on that factory setup, show you why I'm going with this in the first place. So a couple of things. This is that factory tube that I've just flipped upside down to show you guys something. This is where the throttle body goes into that tube. And if you notice this lip here, the lip is where the throttle body sits and seats against that tube. Well, that's only about 82 millimeters. Now, as I said before, we've got an 87 millimeter throttle body, but only an 82 millimeter opening there. Is that enough to offer up a restriction? Maybe, maybe not at this power level, but that setup will offer absolutely no restriction without question. So there's that. All right, so the factory air box, you've got a pretty significant bend here and then bend back around for the snorkel. Again, I don't know that at this power level that would offer up much of a restriction at all, but it's definitely not as smooth and not as clean as how that AFE power kit is. Also, this lid, the upper lid portion that feeds the filter, it's pretty small. In my experience, unshrouding anything in the intake box is always a good thing. Again, at this power level, may not make that big of a difference, but it certainly can't hurt. As for the filter design, this is where I think there might be a bit of a restriction and where guys are picking up some power. This filter, the best of my research could offer me up was to show that this is about a 500 CFM filter. Now, any other restrictions upstream or downstream is going to really do nothing to hurt the filter flow. If you had a better flowing filter, maybe that would help pick up a little bit of power, but when you can get an entire assembly like that and it looks so good, why wouldn't you go with it? But enough about the filter, because again, this thing, probably a little bit of a flow restriction up top. The reason why I decided to go with putting any kind of kit on this truck, and I want to remember to say this before I forget to, is in data logging of this truck, I noticed that my KPA, which is a measure of, in essence, the vacuum in the intake manifold, would rise as RPM got above 5,000 RPM. And that would indicate that there's an intake restriction somewhere. And well, here's the factory intake. There's your filter and your factory components. I don't think this whole setup here is going to have any restriction at all. So it's just to help to optimize the package. Not necessarily looking to gain power, just to recapture some power. Now, factory filter versus the AFE filter, this thing's going to flow about 30 to 40% more. Definitely not going to be a hindrance to power. And what I did with this other filter, guys, I brought it along. This is a factory filter from a Ram 1500. As you can see, it looks like it's a little bit bigger than the Ford filter, but to give you an idea, the air box for this filter was huge. Definitely a large plenum over the top of that filter. So just a bit of a compare and contrast for you guys to see what the two different filters look like from two different brands. All right, let's get this thing installed. So guys, there's really nothing to this install, just some tips along the way. Make sure that you don't lose your little grommets that the airbox sits into. And when you're removing the tabs to get that snorkel out of there, one of them or both of them may break. That's why, if you noticed, you may have seen some snips over on the back of the truck where I was showing the rest of the components. That's what they were there for, was to help fish those out. Here you go, guys. A quick hit of some lube. Got the tube on there. No problem. That's what it looks like. Oh, yeah. And if you're in the middle of doing this, this is how the grommet that you will have removed from the stock box goes in. Rubber side facing the paint. All right, guys. So once you've gotten this far, you will have installed your air box with your factory bolt with a factory grommet. I haven't hammered in the push pins yet, but this will give you an idea of what the air's view is coming into that snorkel and into the airbox. All right, guys, filter is in. Again, that'll give you an idea for what the air has to look forward to. And just like that, guys, she is installed, all wrapped up. One of the reasons why I went with this setup is because of the quality of the thing, and it's the thoughtfulness as well, having that overflow tank holder, that hose holder on the top, definitely made a difference for me. Just the overall fit and finish of this thing is so nice. Glad I went with it. Can't wait to bring you guys some driving impressions and some data on this thing, but until then, post up your comments, let me know what you think, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. That's a wrap.